Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Hi there. Welcome to our talk. Today, the topic is men who hate women and the women who love them. And it's kind of a follow-up from my essay last week. Last week, I wrote an essay called "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised," which is, a spoken word poem by Gil Scott-Heron. The response that I got to that essay, I have a publication on Substack called Come As You Are. And obviously the podcast is also published there. And I also have a business Facebook page. I have a yoga site as well. And I have a business Facebook page for my yoga site, and I published it there as well. The vitriol, and insanity that ensued on that page, on my Facebook page, which used to be this beautiful place of, community. I started that page back in 2009, back when we were blogging, when writers were blogging on the internet. We don't blog anymore now. We write personal essays. But I started blogging on that page back in 2009. And I still post my essays there, even though I do my writing at Come As You Are. I still post my weekly essays there. The page has changed drastically. Facebook has changed drastically over the last several years. And it's one of those things of don't build your house on someone else's property. Over the years, that page grew. So back in 2009, you would just post things and anybody who was following your page would see them. And so sometimes, as that page grew, now it has about 170,000 people on it. Everyone would see what whatever you put out there. And that's how it went for a long time. And so I was writing at the time about things like how to just, how do you apply, if nonviolence, non-harming, is something that's important to you, or truthfulness, right? Like these philosophical principles that I've been teaching and practicing yoga for 35 years. And so that's what the page was about. And that's what I was writing about. Like, how do you apply this stuff to your daily life? And the page grew and it grew and it grew. And then over time, in order to have people that were following your page actually see your stuff, you would have to pay to boost posts. I never did that. And more and more and more, it's like, if you want people to see what you've written or whatever, you have to, now it's like, I think 10% of your people maybe see your stuff. So I just don't. And now once, Mark Zuckerberg decided he was, all in with the current occupant of the White House, I will never give a cent. So that's where we are. So I don't spend a lot of time on that page anymore, which is sad. I built a community there, but it's not what it once was. And so if I post on Instagram, it shows up on that page, and that's still the way that it is. And that's what happened last week. And I'm just sharing that with you because I got a taste of what is happening now. A lot of MAGA people showed up in the comments. And because I'm a liberal-minded person, I don't get a lot of that. I don't have a lot of that readership, not surprisingly. And so I don't get a lot of those people commenting on my stuff or reading my stuff. And for whatever reason, this post, this essay, when it showed up on that page, it drew a lot of that attention. And it was probably, the hashtags or the visuals or whatever it was, So it was unbelievable because what I was writing about was mainly Renee Nicole Good and Becca Good and what happened. Also Venezuela, Greenland, just all of it, this whole idea, just all the things that are happening in the States right now that are so deeply alarming and heartbreaking. And what came back at me was such a wild level of hatred, contempt, disdain, that I really saw like how that group of people, how they feel about people like me in an unbridled, unfiltered fashion. And basically, which was kind of, eye-opening. Not that I was unaware, but I think I was a little bit stunned by and it's still sitting there and it will continue to sit there. But I think I was stunned by the absolute lack of willingness to engage in conversation. And I really tried. Anyone who was just abusive, screaming expletives, I blocked. And I said that after a while because that started. There were people just dropping these incredibly offensive, memes or and if you go and look, which you don't need to do that, but if you for some reason wanted to, you'll see I left a lot of really awful stuff, which you can see screenshots in this week's essay. It's not like I was blocking people who had a different point of view. And I even engaged with a lot of people who were pretty insulting and disrespectful and abusive, certainly far beyond my boundary of what I would normally, if someone is speaking to me in a disrespectful way, right, I'm not going to engage. But I tried because I do not know how we are going to fix what is happening in this country if we can't have reasonable conversations with each other. I will not try again anytime soon. It was so apparent that there is no space for that. It was just a nonstop, just deflection, screaming. It just was really, really disheartening. And I think the part that was the most disturbing and upsetting was the takeaway for me, which was there were a lot of wonderful comments too, by the way. Let me just say, there were probably 70%, comments from people who were on the same page, heartbroken about what's happening here, devastated over Renee Nicole Good, and all of that. But I would say 30% of the people who were just irate, abusive, rude, and not willing to engage in a conversation, and I really tried. And what I came away with is, first of all, an ongoing theme in that thread was she should have stayed home and minded her own business, and this wouldn't have happened. She should have stayed home. And, and a real hatred of protesting and protesters, and a lot of these guys are, they're trying to do their jobs, and no, when you say, well, okay, wait a second, what about the fact that there are people who, immigrants in our country, have a right to due process under our Constitution. So if you're a law and order person, if that's important to you, then presumably you understand that, right? Like, it's not just U.S. citizens who have a right to due process. It's also immigrants in our country have a right to due process, so that you don't have a situation where the president, the executive branch, can just say, that was a bad person, so we, in the middle of the night, we just got them out. We just sent them out, put them on a plane, and now they're in El Salvador in a cell with 80 other people. People have a right to a day in court, to be able to look at the evidence that's being presented. Oh, you're saying I'm in a gang. Okay, well, let me show you that I'm not. Or let me get in front of a judge so I can, the judge can decide. Like, you have the right to at least defend yourself and say, that's not true. I have tattoos, but I'm not in a gang. I've never been in a gang. That's in our Constitution. Otherwise, you just have a situation where you are allowing the president to decide who gets to stay, who gets to go, with no evidence except his word for it. And that's not how we do here. And that's not ever how we've done things. And the minute you start to say that's okay for some people, you're saying that's okay for all people. That's what a lot of us have been saying for a long time here, for the last year. Like, you don't want to start to erode due process for anyone. I shouldn't need to say this, but not all immigrants living in our country are hardened criminals. I think that should be really obvious to people and shouldn't need to be said. And our immigration system in this country has been broken for decades. It has not kept up with the population growth here and elsewhere. And any honest person knows that. Any honest person in our government will tell you that. Anyone who has taken 10 minutes to just ask that question, do a little bit of a dive on the immigration system in our country, will be able to tell you that. Through both parties, we have had a broken immigration system. And it is not, we need our immigrant community in this country. This is what we're founded on. It's a melting pot. That's what we have always been. People were supposed to be able to come to this country. That was the whole, that was it. You come here and you can avoid religious persecution. Come here, seek asylum. We've got the Statue of Liberty. There's a big part of, I think, another part of what was really shocking to me in the comments is the seeming lack of awareness about the Constitution and about American history and about the history of nonviolent protests in this country, which is how things always change, how we've always moved the needle toward something better from the beginning. And this hatred toward, the reason that there are people filming ICE raids, which is absolutely legal, it is a First Amendment constitutionally protected right of all citizens. You are absolutely allowed to film. The reason people are doing that is because of this lack of due process that is happening. Because these guys are coming, they're masked. They do not identify themselves. They do not have warrants. They're armed. They're tackling people and throwing them into the back of unmarked vehicles. And I know what I'm talking about because if you might recall back this fall in Los Angeles, we had the National Guard come in. This administration is targeting blue states, particularly the ones with governors that this president loathes. So it's no surprise that, we've got Gavin Newsom here and Tim Walz there in Minnesota, and it's just like that's why people are filming. If you look Pritzker in Chicago, right? Like if you look at the Chicago ICE raid of the apartment building, which all these things I linked in the essay as usual, so you can go and look. That ICE raid where they had the helicopter, how many, like what amount of tax dollar money was spent on that? You know, at a like a Black Hawk, helicopter and ICE agents rappelling down into this apartment building, knocking down walls, no warrants. And it turned out, and they took children out of their beds in the middle of the night, zip tied them and put them into the backs of U-Hauls, separated them from their parents. And some of them were US citizens. So please go and read some of the things that I linked in the essay. This is why people are filming. They're filming because if they don't, what happens is what happened the day Renee Good was murdered, which is 2 hours later, Kristi Noem gets on TV and she says, ICE agents were snowed in and angry rioters were surrounding them. And Renee Nicole Good was ramming them with her vehicle, and a terrified ICE agent killed her because he was worried about his life and the lives of his, ICE agent buddies. Okay. Then you see all the footage from the people who were there on the street, all the neighbors who were filming, and realize that is garbage. That is not what happened. That's why people are filming. It was just illustrated for everyone. That's why people are filming. And thank God they were. That's why we have 5 different angles of what occurred. And we know he was never off his feet. We know he chose to stand in front of her vehicle, which it goes against the DOJ training manual for ICE agents. They are not supposed to stand in front of a vehicle. They are not supposed to shoot at a moving vehicle, especially when they can easily move out of the way, which he could and did. His feet were to the side of her vehicle before the first shot went off. The second 2 shots, are not self-defense. They're absolutely boom, boom, let's make sure she's dead. The first shot was not self-defense. He chose to stand where he stood. She backed up. She turned her wheels all the way to the right. She had agents screaming at her to get out of the vehicle. She had agents screaming at her to leave. This is what they do. They yell contradictory orders at you at once. No one who's honest is confused about what happened. He did not need to shoot her. He got angry. He got angry because there were 2 women who were not intimidated. They were not scared. He pulled up behind her. Cars were going by her, 11 cars in the time that she pulled up and that, yes. Was she there filming? Did she park her car like that? Yes. Yes, it was an act of civil disobedience, like Rosa Parks, by the way. Like every other person that you've learned about who's protested in all of, American history. Yeah, that's okay. That's good. That there's, these are people that we learned about as kids and celebrated because they were fighting for the best in our country. They were saying, no, we're not, that's not how we do. We're not going to allow people to be treated this way here. She parked her car, but she wasn't blocking anybody. 11 cars went around her. She knew where she was parked. She parked so that people could go behind her and in front of her. And in fact, she waved cars in front of her. And Jonathan Ross drove behind her and parked next to her. And then circled her car, filming with his phone, which is a bizarre thing to do. And she was completely friendly. Window rolled down. Hey, dude, I'm not mad at you. It's okay. It's cool. And the wife was also relaxed, not impressed that this is how he's choosing to spend his time, and made it clear. And he did not like that. He did not like 2 relaxed women, one of them, making it clear that she does not respect what he's doing with his time. And he taught them a lesson. He got angry and he taught them a lesson. And then called her a fucking bitch when he was done. So that is not a man afraid for his life. That is a man who is defending his fragile ego. And a lot of women, myself included, know this man. We have dealt with men like this many, many, many times in our lives. And, that's what I was writing about this week. And a lot of them showed up on the page. A lot of them showed up on the page last week. They were screaming at me in all caps. And it's like, I have the audacity as a woman to get on a page that I built and express my opinions. And then I have the further audacity to block people who are, just unhinged. Actually had a man call my business line and tell me I should not do that. I shouldn't block people. If they're being abusive, then okay. But otherwise, people have a right to their opinion. Again, if you wanted to, I did not. I should have blocked a lot more people. I only blocked the people who were so offensive, like your eyes would water. I engaged in conversation with people who were abusive and disrespectful because I was still trying. I was still trying to have a reasonable conversation somehow. Try to find some kind of bridge or some kind of, just some place where, there might be common ground where we could maybe understand, like this whole conversation about like you liberals, you just don't care. You just want these like criminals on the street. No one wants hardened criminals walking around their cities. That is a lie that's being fed to this 30% of people in America. These MAGA people are buying into this lie that liberal people are, want hardened criminals walking around their streets. That's a lie. No one wants that. Liberal people have children too. Nobody wants, like violent gang members and rapists walking around their streets. No one wants that. Yeah, we need to fix our immigration system, but we also need our immigrant community. And there are a lot of people who are being grabbed from their legal immigration appointments who are trying to do it the right way. There are people who are being grabbed out of Home Depots where they're hoping to get like work for the afternoon in someone's backyard. There are people who are being grabbed out of restaurants. There are teachers being grabbed out of preschools. These are not hardened criminals. There are grandmas selling, fruit on the corner. Grandpas who are working at car washes. These are not hardened criminals. There are people being grabbed in Northern California who are working on farms. They're being chased through the fields. This is not hardened criminals. This is awful. These are hardworking people who are important members of our community who've been here, some for decades, paying taxes and raising families, and they don't get benefits, by the way, and they're being treated horribly. And this whole line of you should stay home and mind your own business and think about your kids. She should have been staying at home, minding her own business, thinking about her kids. Let me tell you something. I don't stay home. I don't stay home and mind my own business. And because this is my business. And caring about my neighbors who are being treated that way is me thinking about my kids. That's me thinking about what kind of world are they going to inherit here if I don't try to keep my neighbors safe and make this government where I pay my taxes, right, and have a president who calls me radical left scum, even though I'm still paying my taxes like everyone else, make this administration follow the laws of the Constitution. Yeah, I'm going to go and protest. Absolutely. Yes, I'm going to try to keep my neighbors safe, and so should you be. That is your business. It's all of our business. And if you're white, you should definitely be out there, because like if white people are not safe, which clearly now, that vitriol that I was experiencing on my page last week, those people, the way they were speaking to me, if that happened to me, if I went and I filmed, let's say, an ICE vehicles, they circle my kid's high school. That happens, and the kids know, they know. And they start sharing that in their stories. They don't know who in school might have a family member who might be in an immigration process, trying to get there, trying to do it the right way. They don't know. They just know it's likely because we're in Southern California. So it's very likely that someone has a family member who's probably somewhere in that process. And they share it in their stories so that anybody who might have a family member in that situation can text. This is where we are now, where kids are trying to keep their friends safe and keep their friends' family members safe. And a lot of people are not even going to their kids' high school graduations now because they're scared. This is hardened criminals. Please, this is not. This is like good, wonderful human beings, hardworking people who pay their taxes. And we are lucky to have them. Lucky to have them as members of our community. And, yes, you should be out in the streets trying to keep them safe. Yes, that's your business. I'm astounded. I'm astounded by people who are like it doesn't affect me. It's going to affect you. If you live in a blue state, it is absolutely going to affect you, but it's going to affect you if you live in a red state too. That's the thing that, these people are not understanding. They think they're safe. Just like women who are married to men who support this administration think the proximity keeps them safe. It does not. It does not. A man who speaks to me the way some of those men were speaking to me last week does not respect women, does not like women. A man who speaks to me the way those men were speaking to me, those men hate women. They hate women. There's a real hatred there. And if you are with a man like that, he might be tolerating you if you are the right kind of woman who is subservient, who is, acquiescing to his opinions and his beliefs and showing up the way he wants you to show up. The second you have a different opinion, or the moment he decides you're not so interesting anymore and he's interested in someone else, and it doesn't matter if you've been married 20 years, things are going to change and you're going to see how little he actually cares and how little protection you actually have. It is a story that happens all day, every day. So you might think you have protection. You have zero protection. And they're not hard to spot. When you're young, they're a little bit hard to spot. And I was writing about that. I've made plenty of mistakes in my life. I've written about it. I've been pretty open about that. I have been in relationships with men who absolutely hated women. And, they're the kind of men who, when you're young, it starts slowly. Sometimes they're the love bombers, you start going out and they're all over it. They chase you, then they have you. And as soon as they have you, things start to shift almost instantly. Then it's like, oh, is that what you're going to wear? Or you sure you should have dessert? Been to the gym this week? Like, God, you talked a lot at dinner tonight. Like, or, you didn't talk at all. Like, it was really embarrassing. Why were you talking to that guy? What were you talking to? I was watching you talk to that guy. A couple of my buddies were asking me like why you were talking to that guy at that party. Like, that was embarrassing to me. It starts slowly and it builds, and then you can't find them. You're like waiting and they're not calling, they're not checking in, they're not showing up, and you're texting, you're calling. Where are you? Like, are you coming home, or what's the plan? And then they'll come back. Oh, I was here. I told you I was doing this. I was with a friend. I was, out here. It's vague. And it doesn't feel right. And that starts. And then that gets a little bit more common. And then it's like very common. And then they won't make excuses at all. And it's like, oh, I'm not doing this with you tonight. I'm not having a night of your craziness. You're so jealous. You're crazy. It's like they chip away at your self-worth until you don't have much left. Those are the men who hate women. The men who interrupt with, well, actually, forget about the men who grab you in a stairwell or, worse. So I don't have a single female friend who doesn't have a story about male violence. Not one. And, it just becomes a way of life where you're like, if you're walking on a street at night and it's dark, like you try to make sure that doesn't happen, or you've got your keys between your fingers, or you're sharing your location with a girlfriend. It's just, you don't leave your drink unattended. If you're out somewhere, your girlfriend is holding onto your drink. Like, it is a constant. It's that whole thing of women worry that men are going to kill them. Men worry that women are going to laugh at them. And, Becca Good was laughing at this man. And that's all that it took. That's basically, in a nutshell. This was not a new recruit. This man has been an agent for 10 years. He is not confused about not standing in front of a vehicle. He knew exactly. He's not a newbie. He knows what the manual is. He knows where he's supposed to be standing. And that whole thing, oh, well, he got dragged. Then you shouldn't be out on the streets then. If you are so traumatized from this thing that happened, then you should be behind a desk. So, the other really kind of wild thing about this anti-protesting, what I kept hearing throughout these comments was, it's your rhetoric that is getting people killed. It's your rhetoric. Me personally, and also like you on the left, you liberal scum. It's your rhetoric about these ICE agents. And I'm like, okay, that's what's getting people killed. That's what's creating the division in our country. That's the problem. Like, okay, so it's not rhetoric. It's what is actually happening. Like, here are links. Again, like, for example, the Chicago apartment house raid. But not just that. How about the woman in New York who got thrown across the hallway in front of her kids? People are being literally pulled. It's Texas. There's, thousands of examples of people being brutalized by these guys. Just even over the last few days, the kids in Minnesota, Ridgefield, they were in Target, U.S. citizens, 2 17-year-old boys who were working at Target, and, Greg Bavino and the whole ICE these agents come in, they storm Target, tackle these two kids, and they're both saying, we're U.S. citizens. We're U.S. citizens. The one kid's like, I've got my passport. Would not listen. Beat them up, threw one of the kids out of the car like 8 miles later, and he's sobbing. This is why people are filming and protesting. And if you don't care, I don't know what's going on with you. But it's not rhetoric on the left. It's actual things that are happening because of these ICE agents. Abuses of power, violations of people's right to due process, violations of the Constitution. People are protesting. And, it just made me, I started to think about like this whole anti-protesting, this hatred toward protesters. Like, hi, MAGA people identify as Christian, almost, all of them, right? Jesus Christ, if you believe in Jesus Christ, was protesting. He's a protester. He was protesting. He was like maybe the most famous protester if you believe in Jesus Christ. And I was writing about that. Like I was writing about, he's protesting corruption and religious hypocrisy, gender inequality, like economic exploitation, social injustice. It's like you want to say you're a Christian, but you hate protesters, but you're a Christian. It's like I don't really know what to do with that. And by the way, the state-sanctioned murder, that was Jesus Christ on the cross. That's state-sanctioned murder. So I don't think you want to be in favor of that. I really don't. These guys are tear gassing infants over the last couple days. There's that. I was talking about Gandhi, nonviolent protest. Like, you want to talk about people and nonviolent protest and civil disobedience. These are the guys. These are the people who are the preeminent leaders of nonviolent protest and civil disobedience. Okay, so we have, if you believe in Jesus, I'm going to put him at the top. Gandhi, who like pioneered different methods of nonviolent protest to free India from British rule. Should he have stayed home minding his own damn business? Nelson Mandela, like these are people we all learned about growing up and thought like those are the people. Those are the heroes in history. Went to prison for decades to protest apartheid and became the first Black president of South Africa. Should he have stayed home, minding his own business? Susan B. Anthony, I had a woman on the page telling me protesting doesn't work. She should have stayed home. This is what happens. This is what you get. Really? Do you like to vote, women? Do you like to have a vote? Because Susan B. Anthony, if not for her and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, we wouldn't be voting here, women in this country. Like, protesting doesn't work. This is what you get. Crack a history book. Do me a favor. Crack the Bible first. If you're going to call yourself Christian, crack the Bible and figure out who Jesus was. That would be, the first thing to do. And then crack a history book, because you seem really confused if you hate protesters and you don't, you're not in support of nonviolent acts of protest, when the government is breaking its own laws, which it is. I was talking about, and again, I linked all of this, but I was talking about, oh yeah, people who this whole thing of like, if you want to vote, we have a serious problem. These men, Pete Hegseth, I can barely, whatever. This pastor, I will not say the guy's name. He believes women shouldn't vote. This is current day, 2026. Okay. He believes the husband should do the voting for the household, that's what we should do now. And if you're not married, then your dad or your brother should vote for you. So is that what you all want? Because this whole trad wife, whispering at the camera, like, is that what you want? You want to not vote? Because they're trying to make it hard. That's what the SAVE Act is. Obviously we have Dr. Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement. Should he have stayed home minding his own business? Would you have said that if you were alive when he was alive? Would you have been saying he should have stayed home? He should be staying home, minding his own business and thinking about his children. I mean, maybe these people would have been saying that. It's quite possible that they would have been saying, well, if he stayed home minding his own business, he wouldn't have gotten assassinated and his children would have grown up with their dad. Those are the people that had white hoods in the closet. Wake up. Wake up. If that's your feeling, if that's your response when people protest, because the government is abusing its power and killing people, murdering American citizens, you are on the wrong side of history. If your current beliefs, right, would be in opposition to Dr. Martin Luther King, you're on the wrong side of history. It's not complicated. It's not. God. It's just wild to me that these are things that need to be said. Rosa Parks, Queen. Do you realize when she didn't give up her seat, that was an intentional act of civil disobedience? She was the secretary of the local chapter of the Montgomery NAACP. And she knew what she was doing. She had been working all day. She was exhausted, maybe a little more tired than usual, is what she said. She sat down. She knew where she was sitting down, and she refused to give up her seat. But she absolutely understood what was going to happen because they had been talking about it. They had been talking about this very thing. Segregation that was happening on the bus, and somebody deciding to sit down and refuse to move. And that's what happened. And as soon as she was arrested, it set off the Montgomery bus boycott. And that was headed by the local civil rights leaders, including Martin Luther King. And Black people did not ride the public buses, for a year. 1 year. And the financial strain was so great, the laws changed. Civil disobedience and nonviolent protest is a bedrock in our country of change from the beginning. It is as American as apple pie. And if you don't know that, then you don't know American history, and you should not be calling yourself a patriot. If you don't care about the Constitution and the laws of this country, you're no patriot. And if you don't know that Jesus was a protester, I'm sorry, I'm not an expert on Christianity, but I think you need to turn your card in for that too. Fannie Lou Hamer, amazing. Sharecropper from Mississippi. And she was severely beaten, fired from her job, and evicted because she tried to register to vote. She tried to register to vote. That's all she did. And in 1964, do you know how recent that is? It's really not that long ago. I know for some of you people, maybe it sounds like a long time ago. It's not that long ago. I was born in 1971. Okay, 1964. She went and talked to the all-white delegation at the DNC and talked about what happened to her. And gave gave testimony called, Is This America? Which I highly recommend you watch if you haven't. I linked that too. I cannot watch it without crying. 1964. And she started the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, the MFDP. And Gloria Steinem, Pauli Murray, Audre Lorde, Ella Baker, John Lewis. I mean, these are all people everyone should know. Everyone should know. And this is not an exhaustive list. These are just, some great people that everyone should know. There are a lot of people. Malala. There's so many incredible people who have changed history just by saying no. No. This is not okay. This is not acceptable. I'm not going to stay home and mind my own. This is my business. What's happening when people are being, harmed is my business, and I'm not going to stay home. But John Lewis used to share this African proverb regularly, and it was, when you pray, move your feet. When you pray, move your feet. Do something. Don't just stay home. Get up and get out there. Do something. Take some action. If what is happening to your neighbors is not your business, I don't know, what's going to happen when it's you? You going to expect people to come and help you? Do you think you're safe? When your government is breaking the laws of the Constitution of your country, no one is safe. No one is safe. And if you don't care about what's happening to other people because you think it doesn't affect you, you need to look inside and figure out what's going on with you. Something's going very wrong, and it's going to bite you in the ass anyway. No one is safe. Even the people supporting this are not safe. That's the really sad thing. I am heartbroken. As much as I'm devastated about what's happening here because I love my country. I had people saying to me, well, then leave if you hate it here. No, I'm not leaving. I love my country. You can go if you want to. I'm not going anywhere. And the reason that I'm upset is because I love my country. There's always been work to do. We've always needed to continue moving the needle. We were never where we needed to be, and we were never who we said we were. It was never, all men are created equal. Okay, if you meant all white men are created equal, okay. But, we never had a situation in this country where all men were created equal. That's why Fannie Lou Hamer in 1964 is trying to register to vote and having that happen. You got to know your history here, folks. This is why banning books is really a problem. And this is why this president likes uneducated people. You have to understand what's happened behind you to make sure it doesn't happen again. And silence is complicity. Sitting back and doing nothing is absolutely being part of the problem. Now, I know not everyone can get out in the streets, but you can be calling your representatives. You can be calling your senators, fivecalls.org. You can be writing emails. I sent an email to the Hennepin County attorney. Her name is Mary Moriarty, and apparently she is the one who can issue an arrest warrant for Jonathan Ross. That man, you know what? We all know what happened. You saw. We all saw. He should be arrested. And the fact that this administration is blocking the local, Minnesota, like their forensic team and all that stuff from getting evidence. There's plenty of evidence. There's plenty of video. We've all seen it from every angle. We've seen 3D renderings. We've seen time lapse. We've seen it all. Ring camera. We've seen the footage from this man's own cell phone, and no one's confused. No one who's honest is confused, and he should be arrested. And I sent an email to her saying as much, because as long as he's walking out there free, the message to all these federal agents is you can do whatever you want with impunity. You can kill American citizens, and believe me, the liberal white moms, the way Fox News has been talking about white liberal women all week, smug, uppity white women. That's what they're doing now. Wine moms. They want us scared and staying home. That's what they want. And that's what we cannot give them. So you got to do something. Support the ACLU. They're doing great work. If you can't get out in the streets, support the ACLU. There's this, in my essay, I linked to a woman who is there in Minnesota who has vetted a bunch of organizations on the ground. If you have the means to do that and you can support or even just share them, there are ways that we can all be helping. It's all hands on deck right now. And, for people that were saying things like, oh, I thought this was a yoga page. This is the most yoga thing there is. So, for anyone who's confused on that level, we could talk about a lot of things for a long time. But if this practice is not making you a more compassionate person, then something's going wrong. And that. So, okay. I am sending you a lot of love. I know that for a lot of people, it's painful. It's really scary. It is, it's enraging. It's all those things, but I'm not without hope, because of all the people that I mentioned, we've been through hard times before and we're still here, but you can't sit back and you can't, hope that other people will take care of it. This government they're not showing up the way that we need them to. And you should be calling your own reps and telling them, I don't want to see you talking on social media. I want to see you organizing and mobilizing. And it is starting to happen. Unions are starting to get involved now. Things are happening. There are faith leaders talking to CEOs now, because when human rights violations start to happen, that's when those people get involved. And that is happening. It's, the ACLU is winning court cases. Whether this administration will listen, I doubt. But, people are mobilizing, but you cannot sit back and, just do your yoga and go to your like whatever, watch TV. I mean, I understand everybody's got a limit of what they can handle, and you got to take care of yourself, and that's absolutely the case. But you really, this is not the moment to do nothing or tune out or hope other people are going to take care of it. Everybody's got to do something. All right. If you need support, you know where to find me, and I'm sending you a lot of love. Never thought I would live to see anything like this, but caring about our children is getting involved. That's how you do it. This is not the world that we're leaving our kids. That's where I'm at. So I love y'all, and I'll talk to you soon.